Hello everyone. In this lesson we're going to look at data types in C#. We'll add a new data type to our program and then we'll explore other data types that are supported by the language. So let's go ahead and take a look. Data types can define the information a variable can hold. And a variable, we've already seen a couple of simple variables in our program. We've seen a Boolean variable and a string variable. But C# has a number of different variable types that are supported. If you look on the right hand side, they're divided into three main groups. There's character data types, there's numeric data types, and then there's Boolean data types. So let's go ahead and look at the details of how you declare data types and variables in C#. The basic syntax is very simple. If you look at the very bottom, I'm declaring an integer variable called iSelection, and the syntax is just int and iSelection. I can also initialize that variable when I declare it. So when I declare iSelection in this particular example, you'll notice I'm setting it to 0 right away. One of the things that's maybe hard to get used to in C# if you've programmed in some other languages is variable names are case sensitive. So in this second bullet, the illustration is here that iSelection in all lowercase and iSelection in all uppercase and iSelection starting with just a capital letter I are all three different variables. So that's something you'll have to pay attention to. We already talked about the initialization of variables, and the last note on declarations is don't forget the semicolon. Most lines in C# end with a semicolon and it's required. So here are the different data types that are supported in C#. It starts with Boolean that we've already seen, and then there's a couple of character variables that are next, a byte and a character. A character is a single character that is a 16-bit character, and a byte is a smaller character that is an 8-bit unsigned integer. So you can see the values that are supported, and I won't go through all of these, but some of the more common types are decimal and float for floating point or real numbers. So that's a number with a decimal point. Another common type is an integer, which is a 32-bit integer, and you can see the range of values that you have. If you need a little bit more space, you can have a 64-bit signed integer, which is a long. A short then is a shorter version of that, which is a 16-bit integer, and then there's an unsigned integer as well. Some of the other types that are illustrated here at the bottom are an unsigned long and an unsigned short. So those are probably not quite as common as some of the other variables on here. So what are we going to do? In this illustration, we're going to make a copy of our program once again, so you're getting used to that. We're doing that in each lesson now. And there's the commands of how to do it on both Linux and Windows. And then we're going to add a simple variable to the top of our main method. We're going to add this variable right here, this integer of iSelection. Next, we're going to start installing a menu, and we're going to add to this menu as we add more examples in future chapters in this class. And so first we're going to have a series of write sections, write line code fragments that are going to put together the beginning of our menu. We'll have a selection 1 and a selection 9. If you choose selection 1, it's going to call our getName method that we've already created, and it'll prompt you to enter your name, and then it'll echo it back out. So that's this particular section of code is for selection 1. Then we're going to have a selection for exiting. Instead of typing in the word exit, now we're going to select it from the menu, and that'll be this selection right here. And this is all put within our while loop that we installed earlier in one of the earlier lessons. So let's go ahead and then look at how we're going to run this thing. So after we put it in, we'll run the program, we'll test our menu selections, we'll test both menu selections. First we'll test the selection in to enter your name, and you can see what that's going to look like, and then we'll test the exit selection. So still pretty simple, but now we're starting to build a framework that we can add even more to our demo code as we go along. So for our demonstration, we're going to jump into Visual Studio Code, we'll copy the program, we'll add our new variable, add in the menu, and then we'll compile and test and run the program. So let's go ahead now and jump into Visual Studio Code and look at the demonstration of how we do this. Okay, I've gone ahead and opened up a command prompt, and let's start by copying our Chapter 9 program to our Chapter 10 program. And there we have it. We see our familiar prompt here, and there we go. So I'm going to change my directory to chapter 10, and then I'm going to go ahead and open up Visual Studio Code with our program.cs file. So it takes just a second for code to launch. And so I'll first start with putting a variable in the very upper portion of our main method, which is our new integer variable for our menu. So we'll go ahead and put that in first, and code is just finishing loading up. So I'm going to replace this section of the code right here because I've put a new comment in as well. So I'm going to go ahead and paste this in so you don't have to watch me type it in. And there we go. And I'll go ahead and clean this up a little bit. So there we have it. I just put in a new comment so it'll reference the documentation. And then here's our new integer variable of iSelection. So next I'm going to go ahead and put in this new loop code with our menu code and the two if blocks that will process the selection of those. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and remove our loop, and I'm going to replace it with some new code. So here we go. I'm going to go ahead and remove this portion, and now I'm going to go ahead and paste in a new piece of code that has the rest of our code in it. So now you'll see that we have our menu in here, our prompt for entering in the menu selection, and you notice there's a new piece of code in here that I'm going to convert the string that's returned from readline. I'm going to convert that into an integer. So in C# you need to explicitly convert variables from one type to the other. Otherwise, if you don't do that, it's going to throw a compiler error. Next, we're going to go ahead and check the selection, and here's our first if block that says if the selection is equal to 1, and remember you need two equal signs for the equality check in C#, and then it's going to go ahead and execute getName and print out the results. And if the selection is equal to 9, then it's going to go ahead and say thank you and goodbye. And notice how everything lines up properly within these loops. I'm going to go ahead and fix up this indentation piece right here. And we've got a couple of blank lines. I'll go ahead and remove those. I'm going to go ahead and save the program here. And with any luck, if I've done this correctly, now we can run this and make sure that our program works properly. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, now I've gone ahead and opened up the terminal window, and let's go ahead and run our program and check to make sure everything's working properly. So now it's compiling. It'll take just a second, and now it's going to ask me for the menu selection. So I'm going to enter in selection number 1, and I'm going to enter in my name, and it prints it back out. And now I'm going to enter in our exit selection number 9, and the program exits successfully. So we've integrated our new menu system, and we're going to continue to build on that in the next lessons. So that's really it for this lesson. Let's jump back to the summary and wrap up this lesson. In summary, we've looked at different data types supported by C#. We've looked at several examples, and we added a new data type to our sample program. Although it was a pretty simple example, we added a menu structure to be able to process our new selection, and we're adding the framework to add more functionality for the rest of the lessons in this course. So that's really it for this lesson. Remember, the attached PDF file gives you step-by-step instructions on how to do this. So the assignment is to go ahead and drop in this new code for chapter 10 before you move on to the next lesson. That's it for this lesson. Thanks so much, and I'll see you in the next lesson. Bye-bye.